I'm supposed to share, right?
Yeah, it should.
When I see it, I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it. We don't have to go through it again. I got it.
Good. So yeah, so share to your pages, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages. I am so incredibly excited to have with us today an incredible human being, an insanely talented pianist, conductor, coach, linguist, whatever you go by these days, artistic director of the San Francisco Opera Center, Maryland Program, Adler Fellowship, geniusness. Carrie-Ann Matheson, thank you so much for agreeing to open your life with us here under the hood. Are you are you sharing all this?
I'm super happy to be here, but there's no like live thing came out. Nothing. You're sure?
Well, you do see us. You do see us on the thing, right?
No. I mean, I'm on your page.
Yeah, and you see the video of us.
I see the video of us.
Oh, maybe refresh the page. Refresh the page, and then it
I'll
shall
refresh the page.
appear.
Oh, there we are.
See, there's a 20-second delay for whatever reason, and so those 20, and then if you hear talking from the video, just mute the playback, and it should fix all the things.
Okay,
but I will take care of handling comments and questions. So if anyone does have any questions or comments, please feel free to chime in the comments section on the Facebook.
Okay,
You got it?
I think it's all shared. I can't guarantee,
hey,
but I see myself in a lot of places. So
this is a fantastic start. When was the last time that we saw each other? It had to have been
I don't know. I did watch you and Brian talking about Don Giovanni, which I really enjoyed. So I feel like I just saw you.
I know, right?
And it got shut off halfway through. I was really upset.
I'm telling you, I think that Facebook is on to us. I think that even though we're using these recordings as educational purposes, we're not making any money off of this thing. Carrie-Ann is talking about the listening lab that Brian Email and I do on Saturdays at 11 p.m. Central, or 11 a.m. Central, sorry. Sort of a nod of the hat to the Car Talk guys that used to come on before the Texaco Metropolitan Opera, radio broadcast out of Boston. Brian and I thought it would be great to do these little shows. And so, but over the weeks that we've been doing it, it's like if we play too many clips from the recording that we're talking about,
shut you off.
Facebook goes, no more. So they shut us off. So we're trying to get around that.
I was really upset because I just moved and I was unpacking and I had your show on and then it went off and I was playing it on my phone and because I was unpacking, I couldn't find my phone. And so all of a sudden you just stopped.
Yeah, that was good.
I neither could find my phone or listen to your wonderful conversation about Giovanni. So it was upsetting on both fronts.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. But what a cool recording. I mean, were you familiar with that? With Birgit Nilsson singing Don Anna?
I was not. And I
wasn't either. I was like, we started talking about different singers we wanted to highlight. Siepi, of course. I was like, ooh, yeah, I've got a recording of Giovanni with him. But Brian wanted to use this other one. And so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Brian. Brian.
Hi, Brian. I hope Brian's watching. Hi, Brian.
I'm sure
or not.
How have you been? I mean, like I said before I think of you in faraway lands. I think of you in Zurich. I think of you in Europe. I think of you. That sounds like I think about you a lot. I do, but I didn't realize you were stateside. This is the best. This is so good. People are like, so how do you know all these people? I'm like, I don't know. I might not be like the top at the top international baritones, but I'm friends with all of the top people. And when we get together, it's just like, it's magical and I love it. And I just love
that's old friends, right? That's old friends. So yeah, I lived in Switzerland for a while. I mean, I lived in New York, which was that was obviously the last time I saw you was before I went to Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And I spent 6 years in Zurich and now I'm in San Francisco. So it just it feels all like yesterday. I mean, it feels like really,
those are three of probably the most affordable living cities in the world, huh?
You know,
You were like, I just want to knock them all off. Number one, number two.
that's it. Next to Singapore, right?
There you go.
Um, yeah, yeah. Let's get real about the cost of housing in San Francisco.
I can't
Um,
imagine.
yeah, I didn't. I was shocked when I went to Zurich, and then really shocked when I got here. And I live 2 blocks from the Met in New York, and so that was a pretty high
Right,
cost.
right.
But San Francisco has made me just go, "Ooh, my head explodes."
Wow. Well, I'm sure that all of the people are so very fortunate that you're there. But let's talk about many moons ago, not too many moons ago, a few moons ago.
A lot of months were old.
When did you get into music in the first place, and how did that start? How did that happen? Did you always play piano? How did that happen?
So, I started playing when I was a kid. I started taking lessons from the neighborhood piano teacher across the street. I was 7. And, that was my first kind of clue that for me, music was going to be about connection with people. Because the reason I wanted to take piano lessons was because I really liked this woman who was the piano teacher. She was so nice and kind, and I just loved to be around her. And so I wanted to take piano lessons. And when I look at that through my eyes now, and for the things that really 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 are important to me in music making right now, that was really clue number 1, that I I love to be around people and exchange energy through music.
That's amazing that at 7 you'd kind of already picked up on that. I mean, we've all been in situations where you've been in a cast or with a chamber ensemble or whatever, and if the energy doesn't vibe, it's kind of like, "Ugh, this is
Yeah.
weird and miserable." But when it does vibe in that way, where it's just like magical, that it turns it into a completely different like level. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
so that's amazing that right out of the bat you were like, "Oh, my piano teacher is so much fun," and that you loved it. And were you? This is just a hobby that your parents kind of be like, "You're going to play piano," or were you like, "I want to play piano"?
Well, it's a little bit sketchy for me, the memory of that time. I remember very clearly her name was Sharon James, and I wanted to hang out at Sharon's place. They were so nice. That family was also nice. Not that my family is not nice, but they were like especially nice.
They had to drag you
Again,
back home.
yeah. My dad's probably watching. My dad. My mom is not on Facebook, so she's definitely not.
Well, Marie
Um,
Sophie Baumgartner says a lot of emojis and love to you.
oh, Zurich.
Yeah, yeah.
Zurich.
So
Um,
okay, so what was the next level in your musicianship? Like, did you start taking? I mean, initially, was it just like once a week piano lessons, or was this already something that was more serious? Like, no, no, I went 3 times a week or something.
No, 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 no. I started off like any kid, but I definitely showed an aptitude for it, and
Yeah.
pretty quickly it became clear that this was something I had a talent for, and I eventually started studying with the. I come from a very small town, right? So Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. That's where I was born, and I grew up there. And I started studying with a really, really wonderful piano teacher at the University of Prince Edward Island when I was really young.
Mm.
And so she sort of brought me up to the next level, and I started, I started going competing in local music festivals, and that was sort of winning ribbons was really exciting for me. I really liked that part.
Did you hang them on your wall?
Oh, they were on bulletin boards, all of them. And
Yeah.
bless my mom, she kept all of that stuff. And that's great until you like move and then you have to deal with it.
She's like, well, here's the box of all the ribbons that I've kept since you were 6 or 7.
That's real.
Yeah, that's
That
real.
is real.
There is that box in existence. I'm
Yes.
sure of it.
Yeah. So there was some fun reminiscing going through that and looking at all of that old stuff. But so yeah, so I did the regular path of music festivals, and then what was slightly, well, really quite atypical, I think, for me in my early life compared to my peers was when I was 15, I moved to Toronto to go into a music school. And that was sort of like, my to leave home at 15 to go to school. It wasn't a private school. People go into boarding schools all the time, but this was like a regular high school. But I went to study with a particular piano teacher in Toronto. And
By yourself, or did your family move with you?
no, no, just me.
Oh,
Just
wow.
me. Yeah, I had family in Toronto that took me in, and then I had to move closer to my school in the
Right,
city
right, right,
when
right.
I was there. But yeah, so I moved around a lot. I spent 2 years in a music school in Toronto, and then I went to McGill University in Montreal,
Hmm.
and I spent 1 year there, which, at that point, I started to sort of have a crisis of, do I really want to do this? Because my parents had pushed me really hard when I was a kid, and my mom, like, there was a timer. I had to practice for a certain amount of time, and I remember putting like comic books behind my music, and I'd be playing scales and reading comic books at the same time, and I would hear my mom comment, and I would like move the stuff really quickly. So actually, that in itself was excellent training for multitasking.
Of course, you've got one score here, another score here. You're like, oh, which one? Oh, sorry, we're going to do this one. Okay, great.
That came in really handy later in my life. So
Well, up until this point, what, and assuming that there were things, but I mean, what would you list as your, I mean, the premise of the show is to sort of talk openly about the challenges or the struggles, but also those sort of light bulb moments that we all face in technique. And usually I'm speaking with singers, but from a pianist's perspective, I mean, were there technical things that you were struggling with or working out, or um, found yourself, frustrated with, or
that's a
I don't know.
great question. What a great question. So um I I was a bad practicer.
Mm.
I'm gonna
Did
out
anyone ever tell
myself.
you how to practice? Did you know how to?
Yeah, I mean, I
You're
remember
like,
when
I know what I should have been doing.
well, no, I think of course it was prescribed, and but that was boring for me. Like, doing things methodically was boring, and I
Mhm.
would rather jump in. And I was a very good reader. I read quickly, and I've always been a really instinctive musician, and so I rode that for a very long time, where I would kind of play things right, and it would be good enough.
Mhm.
And and that continued for a long time. Some people called me out on it along the way, and I got, incrementally better. And then, but it really wasn't until I became a professional, and I lost the cushion of being the talented young artist,
Uh-huh.
until I realized, okay, I can no longer like fake this.
Right, right.
I've got to sit down and figure out how to play, how it works with my physicality, where my shortcomings are. Like, I'm terrible at playing repeated notes. So playing Rossini is a nightmare for me. There are people that have really easy wrist action. That's not good. It's really hard for me to
Mm.
repeat notes, really one note really fast. And I have to put a lot of extra effort in to play music that requires that. I'm not going to be sorry if I never have to play a rehearsal for a Rossini opera ever again. I'm not going to lie. Um,
Or
but
can we
listen,
can we
Weston,
sit through etiquette real quick? Yeah.
no, I refuse. I've refused recitals, because if people want to sing it, I am not your girl.
Right,
There are
right, right.
plenty of people who play that amazingly well, but my skills are much better developed in other areas.
Elsewhere. Yeah. By the way, Julie McSorley says loved it. I don't know what she's loving. Maybe loved something. I don't know. And
I
also Benjamin Brnhm Burnham
Benjamin Bernheim. The
Bernheim. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm the most like amazing tenor in the world, and my one of my dear friends and my most like beloved recital partner, and I miss
he
him
says
so
he's
much.
missing you very much.
He's doing a very exciting project right now, and I would normally have been there, but it was too far away.
Oh.
And so,
Well, that's
Ben,
the thing, right? We try to stay connected as much as we can, and thankfully now, I mean, it's funny. It's like Skype, Google Duo, FaceTime. Facebook Messenger video. They've all been around forever, but people act like Zoom is the thing, and there are some cool options on Zoom. Don't get me wrong, and I think it's a great platform for this, obviously. But how incredibly different would it have been in our profession to not have those advancements in technologies? I think I hear those stories from singers past, and just any musician from the time when during rehearsal you had to go find a payphone to call home, out on the street or something.
Can we talk about what this pandemic would have been like if we were all stuck at home and not able to leave our houses and not be able to see or talk or connect to anyone? I mean, this is awful as it is.
Right.
But we're here. I'm talking to you in San Francisco Opera. We've partnered with a company in Sweden that allows us to do real time coaching with no latency.
Is it
Within
Soundtrack or something else?
No, it's called Elk. It's called Aloha by Elk.
Oh, okay.
And for example, in the opera house, we've got this Dante system set up so that everyone is safe, and I can coach from my office down the hall, and every singers can sing, and there's no problem. Imagine if we didn't have this technology. As hard as this has been,
Wow.
how awful that would have been.
Well, that's why, like back in the day when they would have these pandemics, that lots more. Well, I mean, what have we had? 500 and something thousand at least, deaths in this country. I don't even know. I'm making up numbers, I think, but it's crazy to think about how much we have been able to benefit from that for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
across the board. Okay, so you don't like to play repeated notes. We're getting back to that.
Yeah. But
um,
people who can, bravo, keep doing it.
right, 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 right.
I wish
Um,
I learned when I was a lot younger about how to do that technique properly. I don't know if it's one of those things like, you know, I remember talking with Natalie Desay one time about her high notes.
mhm.
And she said, "Well, I don't know, I can just do them. I could always just do them." So maybe that's what that is that maybe some people can just play repeated notes really fast.
Well, I'm telling you, I've done probably 40 or so of these kinds of conversations. And there have actually been discussions where, how did you learn to access the top in that way and just sing so freely above the staff? And like what you just said, well, I've always been able to do that. Yeah, I've always had an easy top. Oh, great. That's awesome. That's amazing. And then other people, oh, well, it took a long time. I mean, it's kind of hypothetical, ironic maybe, that like I'm kind of known for being able to have a really solid top, and I can sing high tessitura stuff, and that's part of the rep that I sing regularly. But starting out, like I think I was saying, like I think I was mentioning this before, but like with last week with JJ as well, like I did not have a top when I was coming through school and trying to figure out how to navigate my F sharp, and G and A flat. I was terrified of anything that had high notes, and I didn't know how to sing them. And for a while, it was just sort of like cross your finger and muster up enough energy, and hopefully it'll come out. And it wasn't until later in school, like my third teacher or something, that I finally started to realize how technically I could approach it where it would be more efficient. And so that to that point, I love that you mentioned that you had some issues playing repeated notes. What other stuff did you struggle with, or was there something that you initially had issues with that then some teacher brought to your attention, and you had some kind of light bulb moment where you were like, oh, well, that makes everything different and much easier?
I think every single teacher that I've studied with I'm like a crock pot of ideas that I've taken from
Right.
every teacher I've studied with, from every coach I've worked with, from every voice lesson I've accompanied, from every concert I've played, from every colleague that I've watched. So, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But hmm, I, even as recently as a couple of years ago, there were some things that I knew that in order for me to feel comfortable on stage, 100% comfortable on stage in concerts, there are some things I needed to address in the way that I was preparing and in how efficient I was in my practice sessions.
Now, do you mean like playing recitals on stage? Uh-huh.
Mhm. Or, I mean, if I were playing an opera rehearsal, but particularly for being on stage, because when I get nervous on stage, it's generally because I haven't worked something out to the degree that the chances of it going wrong are very small.
Right, right.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, I had to do some real investigation on my own preparation process and looking in it inside the way that I practiced and saying, where am I wasting time? Where can I be more efficient? How can I work this in a way that I'm gonna feel confident going out on stage and get rid of a little bit of I'm starting to have a lot of stage fright,
Mm,
and that's not so good when you're playing recital tours.
sure. Do you think that that stage fright was rooted in what you just said?
It 100% was.
Yeah. I mean, I've
And
always
well,
found.
not it wasn't 100% Weston. It was a lot about preparation, but also for me, I had to get really clear on what I was going on stage to do,
Yeah.
what my goal was. And once I got clear on that, that made everything better.
Can you share that with like how psychologically, what is your goal?
Well, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. I'm not a person who will go on stage and play solo music. It's never been rewarding for me. When I was a solo pianist, the only way I could memorize music was to make a movie in my head
Oh yeah.
and accompany a movie.
So you were playing the film score.
I was playing a film score. And again, clue phone about what career I should have ended up in and thankfully did end up in.
Sure, sure.
But for me, it's about connection. And when I get on stage with a singer, if I allow myself to be 100% connected to that person, their energy, the music that we're sharing together, and be completely in the moment. There's also an audience, there's a connection with an audience, and if you allow yourself to feel that energy, if I sit in that place and that's how I approach my concerts,
Hmm.
that's a place of real power and comfort for me.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Just changing the perception on what it is, what the goal is, right? Why are we here in the
Absolutely.
first place? And
Because if the goal is, which it was for me for a long time, if I'm gonna be really real here,
might as well.
the goal was, well, to have people clap for you and to get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
And getting paid is great. We all need to make money.
Sure.
But for me, if that was the goal, or to say, okay, well, if I do this really well, then something else will come out of that.
Right.
That's
Always
a
looking
fair
for how can this lead to the next thing or whatever.
doesn't work for me.
Right. Or even worse, step back from that a level or a tier. I'm going to prove that I can play this or sing this or do, it's like some kind of proving, I had so many different people you talk to along the way. They're like, well, I don't know why that guy got hired because of me. I've got a better high G or high C than that person. And you're like, you're missing the whole point.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not the goal.
No, but for some people, I think it is, and it would
Yeah.
really behoove those people to sort of take a look and say, there's always gonna be someone who does some things better than you and who defines better anyway,
In this
right?
world of subjectivity, it's like, yeah, someone's better is somebody else's, bleh, so
Yeah.
it's
So
so
we have to sit in real authentic goals
right, right.
that are
Well,
attainable for us and important to us, because your goal is not gonna be the same as my goal, and it
sure.
shouldn't be.
Right, right. We all have to have our own independent ideas of what success is, or and I talk so often to my students about there is no making it. It's like you've already made it. Like you've already decided that you want to enter into this world of music. That's great. Now you're on the journey, right? And like wherever that journey takes you is wherever you are, and wherever you are is where you are. It's like there is no moment of looking around at some point and saying, yeah, you might have goals that you want to accomplish, but everyone's journey is a little different. And I think that as long as you open it up to be like, well, let's see where it takes us, there's no
Yeah.
prescribed road that you have to go down.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned playing recital tours. I'm assuming that you're playing with a singer. You're collaborating with singers. When did that start?
Well, my my working with singers, my life in working with singers started really, really late.
Mm,
It's I started well, there were not a whole lot of classical singers were in my small town where I
mm,
grew up and where I did my bachelor's degree. And I played a lot for wind players, and like I know a lot of flute repertoire and trombone repertoire as a pianist.
good.
Um,
Never know
but
when you might need that next.
it's true.
Yeah.
Um, and then I moved eventually to Victoria, British Columbia, and started my master's degree in solo piano. And
This was after
there,
Toronto.
this is after Toronto. Yeah, I was in Toronto, and then I went back to Prince Edward Island and did my bachelor's degree at University of Prince Edward Island, and then I went to University of Victoria in British Columbia and spent a year there. And that's where I was introduced to the world of singing, really, like. And but it really happened at Music Academy of the West in Santa Barbara.
Hmm.
A friend asked me to go down. I was going to audition. No, she was going to audition for the vocal program there. And she said, and I looked and I thought, oh, they have a collaborative piano program. I think maybe I'll audition for that too. And in that audition, Marilyn Horn was there. And Marilyn Horn heard me play and she said, you should be playing for singers. And I said, I don't have any clue how to do that. And
In the
she
audition.
in the audition, yeah, yeah. And I said, no, I don't know anything about that. So it was at Music Academy of the West. I went there that summer. I did the collaborative piano program. It was so great to be around, to be in a summer festival full of people who were so interested in music. And that was my first time really having that kind of experience. I'll never forget it. And
Wow.
I made some of my best friends there who are still really some of my best friends. um, and I also met the teacher who was going to change my life was at Music Academy of the West. And I wandered into a hall one day and saw Warren Jones standing on the stage teaching a masterclass. And I sat down and listened to the way that he talked about music. And I knew that that was the man that I needed to study with. And I needed to do whatever it was that I had to do to get into his class for the next summer. And I
Wow.
did. And that was like the next beginning.
And what was it about his teachings or his perspective that changed your understanding of how you can collaborate or teach, or what was it that clicked?
The way he talks about music it's in such a real way. It's not about eighth notes or clean runs or like being perfect for the sake of being perfect. It's
Mm,
always about creating a story and connecting with a character or evoking an emotion or talking to me on a level of connection that I understood really, really, really well. um, he taught me how to listen to singers just by the way he would say, okay, listen to the way this person does this. And then, okay, yeah, no, I totally hear that.
mm,
Totally. And so he laid the groundwork for me that in the next step of my career, that the garden would grow from there.
hmm.
But he was the one who really laid it down for me.
And talk a little bit about what it is that you are listening for when you, and maybe that's changed. I'm sure it's changed over the years, but maybe what you initially were listening for when you would work with a singer, and then how has that evolved over time? Because, of course, we as singers come to you if we are lucky enough to work with you, and we are always looking for insight with style, or insight with making sure our diction is right, or f- trying to maybe, and I don't know if maybe you can answer this question. I mean, has a singer ever come to you and been like, I'm trying to figure this out with my teacher and I can't quite figure it out technically, can you help me figure out how to sing this lick, or can you help me to figure out? So I mean, we kind of rely on you for like everything. I mean, and I don't know if that's ever, if singers ever tell you that, in so many words, but from your point of view, how is it that what is it that you're listening for, and how do you go about helping a singer get to that next level or break through that tier?
Well, I think that's evolved and changed over the years. I mean, when I
Yeah.
was a young coach, I literally had no idea what I was doing. Like
Right.
literally no idea.
Right.
Um, but you learn. You watch and you're curious and you watch your colleagues, you listen to singers, you know what you like and what you don't like. And then there's that point, I don't like that. Why don't I like that? And the critical thinking that has to happen between the like feeling I don't like that and knowing why you don't like it. That's the step that was really important for me.
Yeah.
And also in the same way, like I really love that. Why do I love that?
Right.
And making myself identify it and quantify it was really key for me. Um, of course, I think that my first coaching that I gave when I was a young artist at the Met, and again, I knew nothing. Okay, I mean, and I don't have any problem even right now in my life. If I don't know something, that's okay. I just have to learn it.
Well, yeah, I find that when I mean I'm the same way. Like I was looking to see where my diction book is. Like I'm a voice teacher, but oftentimes if we're working in a language that I don't spend most of my time performing in, I need a reference book to look it up. And I have no shame in saying, hold on, let me research this real quick. Let me make sure that I'm giving you the right information. But yeah,
Isn't that better, Weston, than those people who are like, oh, I know everything, and then they spew out a whole bunch of bull, and you're like, oh, and then someone believes them. I
yeah,
what's important for us as teachers is that if we don't know the answer, that we know where to go to get it or who to send them to get it.
exactly, exactly. And I think that if you ever meet, if this goes to anybody, if you ever meet someone that claims to know everything about everything, walk out the door. That is not real
Yeah,
people.
don't waste your money.
My God.
Um, yeah, so
Well, wait, when you first
yeah,
came onto the Met, you were brought on as an assistant associate conductor, prompter,
I,
coach,
I
like
was
all
in
those
the
things.
Lindemann program.
Oh, you were in the Linneman program. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was in the Lindemann program. And, in my audition for the Lindemann program, actually, maybe this is a theme for me in my life because I told John Fisher and Ken Noda in that audition, I don't know what I'm doing, but if you teach me, then I'm going to know. And thankfully, they saw something in me that they knew that they could work with, and I got to learn at like one of the best places in the world to learn. I was at
Yeah.
the Metropolitan every day for 14 years. And how about that for an education? So on top of the grounding that I got through my formal school years, then I got to work with great conductors and great singers and great directors and that orchestra every day.
Yeah.
And that's how I developed my ears.
That's
But
amazing.
20 years ago, I am a way better coach than I was 15, 20 years ago. I was not nuanced when I started. I said dumb things to people. Um, really, but you have to learn.
Right. Right. In your experience working with all of those conductors and incredible mentors, again, like what are some of those highlight moments where do you remember working with a particular conductor and hearing them spout something that was like, oh my gosh? Like I think those are the things that I mean, I know that we all experience that, but if we're able to take that into our performance practice or teaching or whatever it might be, and then we see how that shared with another individual, right, can solve a situation that they're currently struggling with, that's when you're like, wow, okay, that's really cool. Like, do you
Yeah.
have any of those sort of pearls of wisdom?
Well, I learned a tremendous amount from James Levine and the way that he thinks about or way that he thought about music. My my concept of Mozart is really defined by him, and also thinking about Verdi. Also, I learned so much about that stuff from him,
Mm,
and There was one really, and Berlioz actually. There was one really great day at the Met where I prompted a performance of a dress rehearsal for Tristan and Isolde in the morning, and then prompted a performance of Damnation of Faust at 9 p.m.
Was this
And
the Tristan that was being filmed for HD?
no, no,
Oh,
that
okay,
was,
okay.
or
Mhm.
that was, so that was Barenboim
Uh-huh.
conducting the Tristan, and Levine conducting the Damnation of
There it is.
Faust.
Right.
And you know, if there ever were a greater musical day, I don't know what it could be with
Yeah.
having that, being around that kind of energy. So at the Met, there were so many great conductors that I got to work with and learn from, and I learned from every single one of them. Whether it's, yeah, okay, I don't agree with that, or that really inspires me, and I think music should definitely go that way. Um, and that was fantastic. And then I went to Zurich and came into contact with a whole other kind of musician, um, because we have, the houses are, Zurich is a small house.
Hmm.
The kind of music making that you can do there is different than it is at the Met. And that was a fantastic education for me, to work with conductors who specialize in early music, in early classical music,
Hmm.
and the freedom that that they want from their players, the risk taking that they want from the players and the singers. It was the perfect time in my life for me to discover that kind of stuff.
Wow. That's I assume that those things that you just listed, the risk taking and the freedom, those were the differences between what you saw sort of happening at the Met as opposed to in a smaller house like Zurich, or were there other differences in how those uh, I don't know, musical experiences were able to be defined?
Well, I think you can take bigger risks, like dynamically, for
Mm,
example, in Zurich, because Zurich has what, 100, 1,100 seats versus almost
4,000.
4,000
Right,
in
right.
at the Met. And so some amazing experiences that I had in Zurich with conductors like, well, I mean, Fabio Luisi, who was, he's the one who brought me there and is continues to be a massive musical influence for me. Um, but conductors like Gianluca Capuano and Riccardo Minazzi, who are specialists in earlier music, and having access to that kind of thinking, like, okay, what you see on the page is this, how this really sounds is like this, and
Right.
it's not about everything being a perfect quarter note or a perfect eighth note, that you've got to press the boundaries and stretch things. So that was pretty great. Did I answer your question, or am I talking around it? I don't know.
No, no, I think you did perfectly. Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, for it's interesting when you think about singers in America. It doesn't really matter if you've had, I mean, I've never had the opportunity to sing a role at the Met. I've sung on the stage in that house, so I understand what it is to sing in that big of a space. But so many companies at the, let's say, even other A houses, but B houses and even C houses in the United States are oftentimes using like a part of the civic center, and that civic center seats 3,200, you know what I mean? And so I think for so many American singers, regardless of what level you're singing at, have had that experience of like singing in a big place, right? Um,
Mhm.
there are very few actual opera houses in America that give you an opportunity to sing in a smaller, more intimate 800 seats, 600 seats, 1,000 seats, and it's a very different. I remember when I made my debut in Italy, I was singing at the Festival dei Due Mondi in Spoleto, and at the Teatro Caio Meliso, and I think it sat. I mean, it felt like it sat 30 people. That's what
Yeah.
it felt. It felt like I could stand on stage and touch one side of the proceeding. You feel
I,
like this is where. I mean, I remember the hallway of the dressing rooms to get into onto the stage. You had to duck down. I mean, it was just it was a new experience for me, but one that, like what you're saying, dynamically, and like you just feel like your every gesture is seen, and every ounce of sound that comes out of you is heard in a way that is different when I remember singing a long, long, long time ago. I remember singing the father in Hansel and Gretel in Amarillo, Texas, at the Civic Center. Two stories come to mind. First of all, they wanted everyone to wear the Britney Spears mics that went like over your ear, but they didn't really know how that was going to be affected with opera singers, which was like, this is a mess. The other thing was is that we were just in one hall of this gigantic Civic Center, and there was a cast and then there was a cover cast, and the cast was sitting out in the house watching the cover cast do their run through, and it got to the beautiful duet between Hansel and Gretel where they go to sleep, the da, 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 and we're sitting there and like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I kid you not, you hear from the other hall, ladies and gentlemen, here tonight the WWF. It was just like, what is happening right now? It was the weirdest juxtaposition of things I've ever heard. But, to your point.
That's the new Regie Theater production of Hansel and Gretel right there.
Bringing it to the WWE. We also shared a backstage space with those guys. And you want to talk about, 6'6", 400 pounds of muscle. You just, pardon me, excuse me. But I tell you what, when we walked out of the dress, like when we came out through the stage door, the number of fans, and just for a brief moment in time, you felt like what it was like to feel, because they assumed, I mean, I'm not a small guy. So when I walked out there like, "Ah!" And then they're like, oh, never mind. It's one of the opera singers. Never mind.
Yeah,
Great.
that's kind of what it feels like when you're a prompter and you come out of the stage door at the end of an opera and they're like, "Oh no, you're not on a draft. Go."
Well, speaking of prompting, I mean, talk a little bit about that. Did you go to prompting school? Is that a thing? Do they teach you how to prompt? Where do you learn how to be the master of all trades, literally in a little tiny box, helping out everyone on stage?
Yeah, one of the coolest jobs ever. Um, you know, Craig Rutenberg and James Levine gave me that job. And again, I knowing that I had no idea how to do it.
Do you remember the
But
first show you prompted?
Lucia. It was
There you go.
Lucia, the opening of that new production. I think it was 2000. It was either 2006 or 2007.
I remember there was a broadcast in '07. Mariusz was singing
It was
Enrico.
Mariusz and Marcello Giordani
Yeah, yeah,
and Natalie Dessay.
yeah.
And with the Mary Zimmerman production, and Levine was conducting. And so, I had to learn how to do it. Joan Dorneman helped me a little bit learn, and
Well, she
Kathy
knows
Kelly.
how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy Kelly helped me a bit, but basically it was like a learn as you go. And again, I was not the greatest prompter in the world as at the beginning, but I had other skills that made me a good presence in that box. Again, a desire for communication with people and an ability to sort of sense where people are, that has served me throughout my career. And that for a really good prompter, you have to have sort of a sixth sense for when someone is struggling or about to struggle. About to struggle is really important.
I would imagine. I mean, well, I'm sure there's a little clue somewhere along the way, with a fumble or a stumble on a word or a look from them to you. But yeah, that has to be a sixth sense of realizing when they're going to desperately need you.
Mhm.
Which again, um, so it's such a luxurious thing to have, especially in the United States. There's only a few houses that have it, and what again, it's just a skill set that's like, I mean, is there anything else like that you find yourself doing? I mean, in your mind, someone who has actually done that and conducted and coached and, you
Yeah.
know, um,
I'm really glad that I got to spend so long doing that, because look, you're in this box. So I take my years either in the Met or in Zurich. In Zurich, I stopped doing it about halfway through my tenure there because I wanted to focus on other things.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you've got the greatest singers in the world in front of you, and you see them like in real situations, right? It's not like when you're in a practice room, you get to know what happens when people are actually up there doing it, and you're just a few feet away from it. So you see it in like really up close, raw honesty.
Yeah.
And you have this amazing orchestra behind you, and you're looking at, sometimes a really great conductor, sometimes a conductor who might be struggling a bit. Um, but it was an amazing education. And there were not very many performances that I climbed into the prompt box and was like upset that I was there.
Right. Well, yeah.
There's always something to keep you going and to keep you focused on. I mean, maybe like the 20th performance of Barbara Seville, you might go, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to go on to the next project now. But
Right.
yeah, but that was great. And it prepared me really, really well to be a conductor, actually. And well, when I finally took the podium and I stood there and I thought about all the times that I'd slagged off a conductor, and I thought, oh God, it's like people who sit in the green room and the covers who sit in the green room and like say horrible things about their colleagues. And then you get out there and you realize, oh God, people are saying that about you as well.
Right.
But until you've actually done it, you don't really realize what the challenges are. Like
What was
right now that I'm an administrator,
right?
people, be nice to your administrators, because I've never worked as much in my life as I've worked since I've taken over this job in San Francisco.
Wow.
People are working hard to make your lives better, singers and pianists. So that's my
Good to know.
PSA.
That's good to know. What was that first project where you took the podium?
It was a really modern opera. I mean, my first project with orchestra, I'd done some things where I conducted piano performances before, but
Yeah.
it was not the greatest piece of music, shall I say. But and I'd not really done a whole lot of modern music before in my life.
Mhm.
But that's what they asked me to do. And Fabio Luisi was like, I think you'd be good at this. So here, give this a try.
And this was
And
in Zurich,
it
or
was Zurich. It was
yeah.
in Zurich. And I was not a person who was great at counting, like going from 7/16 meter to 2/8 to 1/3. And, it was really, really hard for me.
Wow.
But I studied really hard and it went really quite well.
Wow.
So that was the first thing I did. And then every year I then got to graduate into more mainstream repertoire, which
Wow.
was
So yeah, I mean, as you sit from your bird's eye view now and having like the insane experiences that you've had, what do you hope that singers, well, I mean, you're in a unique position, right? You're going to hear some of the best up and coming talent to audition for Marilla and for Adler and for the whole thing. What is it that what kind of advice can you give to young singers? Like, hey, listen, when you bring and you walk into the audition room, what is it that you're listening for? What is it that you hope that they do? What are some trends that you've already seen that you wish people would not do? Like, what's your take on that?
um hmm, where to go with this, because there are so many things. For me, what's important is I want to know who you are as an artist when you sing for me, whatever that is, because
Yeah.
every single person has something about them that is special and something that they do really well. And when you're young, it might be really hard to define that.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get that. And that's part of our job, Weston, as teachers, to help people get closer and closer and closer to the center of who they are as artists and what they're trying to do. What is important to you. Are you a singer because someone told you you were good at it, or do you like telling stories? Is that your thing? Or do you really, really love to sing the best high notes ever? Or find what you're good at and make me love that.
Right. Right. What are some things that you have seen? Hopefully they're not trending, but what are some of the things that you have seen that just make you want to bang your head against a wall and be like, "Oh, would you quit doing that?"
Uh, People singing the same thing the same way every single time they sing it, that drives me bananas.
Talk about that. So what do you mean when like
Um, so the truth of it is, and this is coaching 101, that a character is experiencing that for the very first time. Whatever you're singing, they're experiencing that real time.
right?
Now, if you've programmed your reactions, your hand movements, your everything, that you do it the same way every time. And during this pandemic, I've listened to a lot of auditions, and it's been some same people coming in, and I thought, wow, right now he's going to lift his hand, he's going to go like, and then it comes. That's what happens.
You mean like on video or live? You've actually
On video, on video,
yeah.
on video. And it's not the same video. It's not like I'm watching
Different
the
video,
same
but
video.
the
No.
staging, the
Yeah,
gestures are
yeah, yeah.
identical.
So when it looks like a teacher has told you to do it, or an acting coach has told you to do it, or you saw Mariusz Kwiecień do it, so you're going to do it too.
Yeah.
That doesn't wash so well with me. And quite frankly, I'm a different person every single day. That makes me sound like I'm a little bit imbalanced, which I'm not. But
I
maybe
know
I
what you
don't.
mean. I know. We know what you mean.
Um, but no, when I play something, depending on what's happening in my life, or how I slept, or what the vibe is in the room, I'm going to play things differently. And so being open to that, and being able to be real in the moment is really important. And I would love all singers and pianists, all musicians, to be able to experience that and not be afraid that if they're not perfect,
Whatever
that's going to,
that means.
yeah, whatever that means.
I think so often, I mean, this is kind of the difference between prescriptive approach and holistic approach, right? It's like the prescription is, oh, and then use your left hand to gesture far away. And that, it's like you're just coming up with some kind of recipe of like, what? Why don't you tell the story in the way that you would tell it? And that's why, I've had to sort of step into the opera director position at UMKC this year, as we do a search for a new director of lyric theater, as we are calling it. And so this semester, I'm directing the opera scenes program, which we're doing all on Zoom. And we are focusing on the De Ponte Mozart.
No way.
Yeah,
Awesome. My favorites.
I know, right? So we're doing Figaro, Così, Giovanni, and I think we're doing in total about, I think we have 12 or 13. No, yeah, somewhere around 11 or 12 scenes.
Are you doing
There's,
the end of Giovanni?
no, we're not. Unfortunately, so here was the thing. We have 7 people signed up for the class. And so
Oh,
I was just like, at first I was just like, please let there be a guy in the class. Like, I hope that, because I didn't know what was going to happen. And so we have 2 guys. We have 2 guys, and we sort of have a bass baritone, and we have another baritone, tenor, baritone. And then we have some young, these are all undergraduates. And so, yeah, the Giovanni scenes that we're doing the I la testa mia that goes into Vedrai Carino. We're doing the Al fin siam liberati that goes into the La Cirega la mano, and we're doing O capito, the aria that was one of the scenes, and then A fuggi traditor.
nice.
Yeah, and then the Figaro scenes we're doing the
Wait,
Vala Vecchia Ferrante. What's
how
that?
long is the scenes program going to be?
I don't know. So we're doing our first run through of the entire program. Actually, Sandy Eddy has helped me out. So she and I together have, because she called me up. She was like, "Hey, I hope I'm not. I'm sure Sandy wouldn't mind me saying this, but she was like, "Hey, do you have any class that I can help you out with? I'm just trying to get some experience, put some things on my CV." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." I was just told that I would be directing this opera scenes class. Why don't we do it together? And she has sung Carabino so many times, and Dorabella and Zerlina a few times too. So
I mean, a really beautiful singer and
an
a
incredible
wonderful,
person.
wonderful human being.
I just thought how amazing for the 2 of us to kind of share this. And so
Lucky
um,
student.
we're doing our first like run through from beginning to end on Tuesday of next week, which
I want a text message after, like, to tell me, yeah, it's 6 hours long.
here's how long it ran. Yeah. Yeah, so I wanted to make sure that everybody that is in the scenes program has an aria, and then
Yep.
they also have at least a recitative. And then for all of the ensembles, on Zoom, you can't sing synchronously unless you have the Aloha Elk thing that y'all have got. But we're going old school. And so I thought, well, here's an opportunity to really dig into the Italian. And so instead of making it a musical thing, I turned it into spoken dialogue. And so
Oh,
like the La Cirarem La Mano is, Giovanni going, La Cirarem La Mano, speaking the text in a way that's like, and it's cool because you can repeat the words. You're not bound by the rhythm of the duet. It's sort of taking that moment and turning it into a much different kind of sometimes more intimate, sometimes, yeah, it's interesting to see how they do. So
that's cool.
yeah, I'm excited to get it up on its feet here soon. We've been working hard to try to figure it out, but I'm not even sure why I
But
started.
they're going to have such a great experience when they finally can sing those recits with music, having
Well,
connected with it in that way.
they are singing the recits. That's what. So they're we are able to have a pianist on Zoom who is, I don't have my
Oh, wait, so you're doing the recits with music, but the ensemble spoken.
right,
Oh, wow.
because what happens is anytime that two singers sing together
Yeah.
at the same exact time, like you would in a duet, it gets all wonky. But the pianist can roll a chord, and that's fine. With and
Yeah.
in almost all the recitatives that we're doing, none of it is like people singing at the same time. It's all just reaction and back and forth.
That's going to
So
be really interesting.
yeah, it is. I think it's going to be neat. I'll certainly record it, and I'm excited. I mean, look, I'm just excited that we have a project to work on and that we're able to do it in this way. And it's exciting to see. But I was still trying to remember why I even brought that up, and I'm not sure. Other than to say that, like, well, this is what we're doing. This is how we're filling our days now. And of course, you're working full time in San Francisco. But what is it that you're looking forward to have happen in the months to come?
Oh God, look, San Francisco, this administration of this opera house, that it's just filled with really, really visionary people with such great energy and such great hope. The general director of this company, Matthew Shillock, is one of the world's really most kind and visionary people. I love working in a company with this kind of culture. So what we're doing here is, because we can't be in a room right now in San Francisco, you can't have a singer and a pianist in the same room.
Mm.
So inside. So
Even if
what?
both are vaccinated and everything?
No, not yet.
Mm.
Not yet. They've had very strict restrictions here. So it's, as you might imagine, Weston, this has been a heck of a way to start a new job. And
Well, yeah. I mean,
with,
I
with
kind of have that idea with, I mean, almost all the teaching I've done has been virtual at UMKC. So I know.
yeah, yeah, it's so I have thankfully I'm not doing this all on my own, but I have an amazing partner. Do you know Marcus Beam?
Of course I know Marcus Beam.
So
Yes.
did you so folks, Weston didn't know that I'd moved to San Francisco. I'm outing you. We talked before the
Of
call. I was
course.
like, why are you in San Francisco? Marcus is the general manager. So we are a team running this program right now.
I knew that Marcus was in San
You're
Francisco.
turning red.
Well, I kind of. So, I mean, Marcus used to be a singer. We came up together, right? I mean, we were all doing it at the same time. And then he was a manager for a while,
He
artist
was.
manager.
And now he's my work husband.
That is amazing. Please give him the biggest hug from me.
I will.
Love that
I
guy.
mean, talk about one of the world's great people, Marcus
Yeah.
Beam.
Well,
Um,
how amazing that the two people who are running what you guys are running have the experience that you guys have. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
incredible. That is kudos to San Francisco for figuring out that team.
Greg Henkel did a really great job
There you
of
go,
that.
Greg. Shout
Greg
out
was
to
the
Greg.
one who put us together. So he's a very, very smart man to just to know that that was going to work the way that it does. Anyway, so Matthew and the team in San Francisco, they built a huge stage outside in a parking lot just north of San Francisco. And we're going to do Barbara Seville in a drive-in. And
Lovely.
right. And so it's like Lucas Meacham and Alex Schrader and Daniela Mack. And it's really like a really San Francisco, Kathy Cook,
Yeah.
big San Francisco favorite cast. And then, that's super exciting, for, of course, for the company and for me. But what's really exciting for me is we have 11 fantastically talented Adler Fellows, 9 singers and 2 pianists. And these young musicians, they've been working their butts off during this pandemic, studying and over Zoom and being patient and singing in their bedrooms. And we're going to get to do a gala concert, 3 gala concerts.
Wow.
And so we're in the midst of preparing that right now. And
Is this with orchestra, piano, or
with piano, we have 2 fantastic pianists in our program, and they're going to play, and everyone's going to sing. I've not heard any of these people sing yet live without a mask on, so that's going to be the first time. I heard them. I've managed to get in a room with them a couple of days ago. Everybody, like San Francisco Opera, designed these masks that really are very coronavirus protective,
right?
And so they all were wearing the protection masks, but at least I was in a room with them and we got to be together as a group. But I'm really excited to get to hear them sing.
What is your take on the rebirth of the art song recital post COVID? I mean, do you think that I know a lot of people are saying that it's, well, I mean, for the top 1% singers, it's never been a thing that disappeared in the first place. I mean, everyone's always interested in hearing, Vieuxtemps and you do a recital together, or Jonas Kaufmann and you do a recital together, or whoever. But
Benjamin Bernheim.
There you go, Benjamin Bernheim.
Watching Ben. Hi, it's late there.
Everybody. But I know a lot of people have talked about, like, well, it's going to be a much more affordable option from producers, moving forward, and to have just 2 people, it solves a lot of the issues with safety. Like, do you think that that's going to be something that takes off, or is it still going to be sort of the challenge that it's been for the last, however long?
I sure hope so. My recital career, when I moved to Europe, I played more recitals in my 6 years in Zurich than I did probably in my whole career up to that point, because the art form is valued more over there.
Yeah.
And I hope that happens here. There are amazing presenters here in the United States who have kept this fight going. I mean, you and I are both graduates, alumni of the Marilyn Horne Foundation, and how Marilyn fought so hard. And Cal Performances is doing it here. Jeremy Geffen is doing it. Peter Russell in DC with Vocal Arts DC, Carnegie Hall. People are pushing.
Yeah.
So I hope that this is going to continue. What I think has to happen is we need to make recitals a more immersive experience.
Agreed.
So that it's not just someone like standing on the stage, singing. We need to move that with the times and realize that audiences today, they need more adventurous programming and maybe a little bit more visuals. I had the great fortune to do one of the Met recitals with Joyce DiDonato, and Joyce is an absolute visionary in this field.
Well, like her recent Winterreise was brilliantly produced. I thought that was such a great idea. I mean, I've seen a few different things that she's done. Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
But she knows, she's managed. Joyce is so creative, and those are all her ideas. It's not like some publicist or record company or whatever is telling her what to do. All of that stuff comes from Joyce's incredible vision. But in the recital that we did for the Met, she had an artist bring in like an exhibit, basically. And she chose the repertoire in a very theatrical way. She created an event. And I think that's what we're going to need to start doing going forward to bring the recital genre in this country into a more prominent position.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I even remember when I was at Juilliard, Frank Cozzaro told us one day, well, he kind of yelled at us. He,
As he did.
he does. He goes, Weston, do you do you know the Mahler? What Mahler? Which Mahler? What do you mean? No, I don't. I don't know any Mahler. What do you mean? The Songs of a Wayfarer. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of those. Yeah, learn them. Oh, okay. And so, unbeknownst to us, he had created in his mind this vision of a staged Liederabend before it was really a thing, you know. And the first half of it was Dichterliebe and Frauenliebe und Leben intertwined together to tell a story
Interesting.
with Brian Mulligan and Aaron Elizabeth Smith. And then there was an intermission. And then on the second half was me doing the Mahler Songs of a Wayfarer. And he was like, but I don't want you to, I'm not going to do his voice. He goes, but I don't want you to, I don't want you to read this like it's written on the page. I want you to think about the whole thing as past tense. And he goes, I want you to imagine that you are a soldier who's gone off to war. And while you were stationed overseas, you got word that your wife at home had died.
Oh dear.
And so then you finally got sent back home and you come home to an empty house. You have to deal with the whole arranging of everything. And you're just too broken to even visit the gravesite where she's been buried. And then you finally, 2 or 3 weeks later, get up the courage to go to the cemetery to see the grave. And that was where that's where it started, was me kind of walking in and finding, not even knowing where to look, you know. And then once you found the grave, kind of sitting down next to it, and that's where the second song took place, and just noticing this juxtaposition of nature with, you know, the death of your wife. And then the third song was all about the anger that, you know, this person was tormented through. And then finally he decides to join her in the fourth song and to kill himself and to sort of leave this existence and go off to be with her. And like even saying, like, I just have goosebumps. It was, but my point in even talking about this was just like taking a set of four songs and creating a story, telling the story in a way that was just like, wait, what? I had no idea that that's what these songs were about. Do you know what I mean? Like, to your point, like bringing it to an immersive experience with the audience so that they are let in on. I mean, to say that the world is filled with so many amazing art songs is the understatement of the world, right? I mean, it's like the largest collection of things that could be so easily accessible too, right? I mean, like I'm saying, it just requires two artists that come together to tell some stories. And I think if you do it in an inventive, creative way, it can really be amazing. And like you said, there's been so many organizations that have fought to keep it going.
You
Um,
know, let me just like say this, that the other day I was working with one of our Adler fellows on the Strauss song Zueignung.
yeah,
And you know, I've played that song hundreds of times. And it was really interesting too, because I want to talk with him about the poetry and what are you getting at here? And the truth is, when we read text or when we look at a poem, we look at that through our own experiences, right? So your interpretation of the poem is going to be different than mine because we're not the same person.
right.
And so so our Adler fellow, he talked to me about what Zueignung meant for him and why, and he infused that into his singing of it, and it was way different than I would have imagined it, but that's the way that he needs to sing it.
Right.
And that's the kind of investigation that young singers or all artists have to do. I think we have to really get inside and do the critical thinking. What do I think about this? Not copy what Fischer Dieskau does.
Exactly. Exactly. Now I remember why I started talking about those Italian opera scenes that I'm doing for the school, is that one of the steps in our process was that I made everyone not only translate it from Italian to English, but I also made them do a 2021 colloquial translation.
Yeah, good.
How would you say this right now, you being 19 years old, with the verbiage that you use with your friends, like what are these characters saying? And it was so amazing to hear them improvise in
Right.
the scene in English of this, these hundreds of years old. It was just incredible to hear what they brought to it, because you're right, whoever's singing it, whoever's looking at the poetry, that's their version, their interpretation. And I think that's where the fun part of music making really, really lies, because then you get to put your own flavor to it.
That's it. There's the key. And that's the center of this entire conversation, is putting your own flavor, knowing what that is,
Right.
and knowing that that is the very, very best that you're going to be. Because if you're trying to copy someone else, you're just going to be a poor imitation of someone else, or maybe a good imitation. But I said this, in an interview recently, that it's a rite of passage. When young singers, and I did it, I copied the way that Warren played the piano for a long time, and I was not good at that.
Mm.
And then eventually I realized, okay, no, I can do this. And James Levine was really helpful for me in saying, okay, you know what you're doing, just do it. But
Isn't it funny how sometimes we need permission? It's like we, for so long, I mean, I think all of us kind of get stuck in this place where we're like, well, is it okay? We're always asking permission. Is it okay if you do this, or is it okay? What would it be okay if? And then
so
someone just
can we
goes,
just
you know,
tell
you know how to
yeah,
do this.
can we just tell young artists that it's okay to do that?
It's
I
okay
mean,
to make mistakes too. It's
it's
okay to try something and be like fall on your face failure, right?
and it's okay to do that on stage. If as long as you've practiced, okay, I'm not telling people not to practice,
Right.
but if you go and you like a figure skater. So say you go for that jump and everything is awesome, and then you miss it, that's it. Okay, so you don't win that competition.
Right.
Who cares?
So what, who cares?
But you really went for it and you left it on the stage. Go for it. The people that I love to watch on stage are not the people who play it safe. They're the people who have something to communicate, and they're going to do it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I just looked at the clock. It's like this has already been an hour and 10 minutes. It's kind of crazy how
We need to
quickly.
stop talking now.
I know. No, we don't have to. We don't have to at all. In fact, Jim Ross says, "Nice to see you."
Oh God. Hi, Jim.
Yeah, and
That orchestra trumpet player.
Vanessa Caridi, this was about 30 minutes ago, said, "Oh, Marcello," when we were talking about that production. Nova
Yeah.
Thomas says, "Such a great mind meld. Thank you both." Nova Thomas, the first opera that I was ever in professionally was Faust, and I was singing the role of Wagner, and she was the Marguerite,
Oh, how
al-
wonderful.
along with Cornell McNeil's son, Walter McNeil. He was our Faust. And my voice teacher from undergrad was the Valentin. So we got that, that there's that little page of recitative between Wagner and Valentin where they get to kind of sing together. And then Mikhail Svetlov Krutikov was the Mephistopheles, this Russian bass. And
Yeah.
Fiora Contino was conducting. And it was such an incredible introduction to like, oh, this is how a rehearsal goes. These are who these singer people are that I want to be one day when I grow up. And
That,
Nova says, and you were terrific. Nova, you are too kind. You are very. In fact, I still have. She wrote me the sweetest card. Oh, also the Z Bell was Virginia Dupuis, who I ended up being colleagues with when I taught at SMU for a year. So it's just kind of crazy how this is such a small, intimate business, and paths cross constantly, and it's just.
so now there's a young singer somewhere who's gonna talk in a podcast in 10 years and say, I got to sing on stage with Western Hurt, and I mean, that's what it. Warren said that to me a long time ago when he said he was at the Met during like the golden years, so to
Sure.
speak. And I said, oh my God, I can't imagine what that must have been like to hear so and so or so and so. And he said, yeah, and you're going to tell your students that you did shows with Renee Fleming and Jonas Kaufman, and
Right.
that's the way the world works, right?
Yeah, it keeps going. It keeps going.
Keeps going.
Well, I am so glad that you were able to join us and made time for this. It was so great to see you and talk with you. And
Likewise.
I think that everybody's really enjoyed this. JJ Penn also said thank you so much.
I loved your chat with JJ, by the way. I
It
thought
was great,
that
right?
was a much more intellectual chat than mine. So than this chat. What does that say? I loved the chat. I love that I have
Like I'm
colleagues
turning red
JJ
again.
out there in the world. Hi, JJ.
Hi, JJ. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love all of you. This is going to be so fun. I think next week is Mia M. I think you know her, and
Please
then
tell me I said hi.
Myra Huang is I think running the
Myra.
show. I know, right? Such great people. I can't wait.
Good ones.
Yeah. Well, I tried. I
Nice.
tried to pick some pretty good ones.
Yeah, everybody's really that's a bunch a group of awesome people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great musicians.
Yeah. Well, it's I mean, it's really been fun to hear from your perspective and your side of things. When I say you, I mean coaches, pianists, conductor, that side, because we all approach this from our own unique sort of you know view. And I think that when your view is I don't know, I just feel like perhaps we as singers have something to learn from that, because I think that you mentioned it briefly sort of as a prompter, you're doing all these different things. I think as a singer it's very easy to get focused on just the one thing that you're doing, but if you start to really pay attention to and the cello solo, that's duet that you're actually singing with, as opposed to just being like, this is my line and I'm going to sing my line. If you do make whatever you're doing more of a collaboration, I think as a singer, I know that since I made the decision that that was really 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 important to do, it certainly has enhanced my music making. So
You know
it's
what you just did? You
hmm,
just brought this full circle back to connection.
connection,
Because
there we go, right?
it's about
it's all
connection.
it's all about the connection, and it's like it's not only the connection that we as artists have across the orchestra to the conductor or on stage with one another, but perhaps most importantly across the pit into the audience, and making sure that that connection is electric. And I think that that for me is what I miss the most, is feeling the energy from the audience and having that be what inspires music making on stage, which I cannot wait to get back to.
We're one day closer to the end
I
of
know,
this
right?
than we were yesterday. I tell myself that every single day. One day closer.
I hear you. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful weekend. And I
You
cannot
too.
wait to make music again with you, hopefully sooner than later.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, again, enjoy your weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Sending you lots of love. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take,
Sincerely. Thank you.
take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.